Hi, I'm going to be talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. The client's name is Buck O'Brien, Bucko''Brian. My name is Shannon Vieira, ShannonVieira. The client is 36 years old. There were two differential diagnoses. The first one was post-traumatic stress disorder. The second, acute stress disorder. Acute stress disorder was ruled out due to duration of greater than 1 month. There were three primary diagnostic features. The first, exposure to traumatic event. Exposure to traumatic event. The second, persistent re-experiencing of the event which interferes with the person's ability to function. So again, that is persistent re-experiencing of the event which interferes with the person's ability to function. And the third, duration of 1 month or longer. Duration of 1 month or longer. Okay, and for Buck O'Brien's story, he's a 36-year-old fireman who was in an incident where he received severe burns over 1/2 of his body. He had to be hospitalized. He was in excruciating pain, but he never let on. The nurses all said that he was very stoic and he never complained. As soon as he was discharged from the hospital, his demeanor changed almost instantly. His wife stated that he wasn't sleeping at night. He would wake up gasping or screaming, and when she asked him about it in the morning, he would say he was having nightmares about being trapped in a burning building with the burning beams on him. So during the day, his mood changed as well. He became really irritable. He would pace back and forth, his hands would tremble, he was extremely jumpy, over vigilant, always like looking around. He was shaky, sweaty, and frightened. So after about 8 months after the incident, he decided to go in to a doctor and get physically evaluated. Physically, there was nothing wrong with him. Well, his burns were healing really well, actually. So he went to a psychologist. And when he went into the psychologist, he tried to put up a strong front, like he wasn't nervous. He was chain smoking, but you can tell he was like looking around, shifty in his seat. He wasn't very comfortable. The main thing Buck talked about during his psychology section, was how he was really ashamed and he was frustrated with himself. He felt really guilty because part of his job as a fireman was to train the new recruits on safety procedures, and the accident stemmed from him directly not following the safety procedures. And so he says that not only doesn't set a bad example, that it's just something he shouldn't have done, and it's his fault that the accident happened. It's his fault he has all these burns, and he states that he doesn't know how his fellow firemen will ever work with him again. So he's feeling really guilty and embarrassed. He is invited, him and his wife are invited to a dinner at the firehouse. This is the first event that they've really gone to since the accident. Buck has rarely left the house. And everything's going okay until the fire bell rings and he almost jumps out of his skin. Buck is so jumpy and he experiences all the normal symptoms that he has been experiencing, the shaking, sweating, frightened, and so he says that he feels sick to his stomach and has to go home. Buck has recently stated that the nightmares are getting worse. He always has nightmares of the fire all around him, and they're more and more consistent, and they're getting more and more terrifying for him. Buck has also stated that he's supposed to go back to work in about a month, and he doesn't know if he'll be able to go back then, and he doesn't think he'll be able to go back at all. He just doesn't see how he's going to be able to work again with fire. And most recently, he's even had suicidal thoughts saying he doesn't know what the point of him living is, and he doesn't see what the point, he doesn't see why he should keep on living. So that's pretty much the end of the story for Buck O'Brien. And for the multi-axial diagnosis, axis 1, he has post-traumatic stress disorder. Axis 2 is none. Axis 3, severe burns over one half of his body. Severe burns over one half of his body. Axis 4, fireman injured on the job. That's fireman injured on the job. And for Axis 5, Buck has a GAF of 58. And lastly, for the theoretical perspectives, we had 3. Cognitive perspective, he showed a lot of negative self-talk. He feels overly responsible, excess self-blame for events beyond his control, and inappropriate guilt over the outcome of these events. These stem from unrealistic expectations. Second perspective is by behavioral perspective, and the client could possibly be suffering from his anxiety due to a faulty learning of classical conditioning, where which occurred during the event and which leads to a stimuli of fire. Another faulty learning experience is his operant conditioning, where his negative reinforcement with the avoidance of his coworkers and his work. So for the classical conditioning, it occurred when Buck's development of a fear of going back to work to fight the fires. So the fire is the negative stimulus. And lastly, biological perspective. The client could possibly be experiencing his anxiety from an overactive sympathetic nervous system, too much GABA, or not enough GABA, and so the neurons keep firing, and too much norepinephrine, so he's constantly on alert. That's why he's overvigilant and stuff like that. Also, for the biological perspective, there's an abnormal brain structure, or a possibility of abnormal brain structure with post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's a positive correlation between PTSD and the development of atrophy of the hippocampus. So that is also another possibility he could have dystrophy in his hippocampus. So that is pretty much all for the case of Buck O'Brien and post-traumatic stress disorder. Thank you.